All right, we are back on MorningLine. It's Tim Takacs, the man with the bow tie. The one without the tie,
right.
Nick Beres. The show's rolling right along.
It is.
Questions or
great
comments?
Questions.
Yeah, there's some good ones. Let's go. We've got Dean next on line 2. Good morning, Dean. How can we help you?
Hey, I got a question for you folks. My wife and I are both in our 60s, and we're living at home. We're both retired. And I was wondering what would happen if one or the other of us needed like long-term care, and we couldn't take care of the other one. Would they put the other one out of their house so we have to live in our car, or I don't know how this works. You know, I got a modest pension. She's on disability, and I also receive disability, and I have a like a supplemental money annuity that I put into all the time while I work too, that I have some money in the background. And I'm just wondering, will they take all this away from me if one or the other of us has to go into long-term care?
Yeah. The short answer to that question is no.
Okay.
All right. And just sort of a brief explanation of that is what you hear about how the Medicaid program works is often along the lines of, well, you can only have $2,000, but you can keep your house, but they don't let it. But if you're in a nursing home and you're on Medicaid, you know, they don't let you keep any money to like keep your house up. So you may have to sell it, you know, and then Medicaid takes it in the end. That's what we hear. Okay, and there's some kernel of truth to that. All right, but that's for people who are not married. People who are married, you know, and one spouse goes into the nursing home, it's almost like it's a different program. It's a whole different set of rules, and those rules are designed to protect the other spouse. The other spouse.
Yeah.
So one spouse goes into the nursing home. So Dean goes into the nursing home, right? You know, and his wife comes to me or comes to somebody and says, you know, do we have to spend everything? Do I have to sell the house? The answer is no. Now, there's certain ways that Dean can qualify financially. He doesn't have to spend down everything. They don't have to spend down everything. They don't have to sell the house. You know, when Dean dies and he's in the nursing home, Medicaid doesn't come in and they don't put a lien on the house. You know, they don't make his wife sell it. You know, they let her keep money and some income. So it's probably the best thing I can tell Dean is that it can be a worry for our spouses. Sure. You know, and to me, the most important thing is to recognize that if you get into that situation, you know, don't think that, well, I have to give everything to my kids, otherwise, you know, we're going to be bankrupt.
Okay.
You know, there are a lot of options that you have. The most important thing is that if either Dean or his wife get to a point where they start looking like maybe in the future will need long-term care. I mean, you've seen it in your family. You know, you don't just wake up one morning and have to go to the nursing home.
No,
it is something that you can foresee. Often you have several years.
Yep.
You know, and you need to start early.
And you have to. No one likes to, but you have to. By the way, we should say too that when you mentioned about giving to your family members, someone might say, well, look, I've got this money in the bank, but I'm just going to give it to my son, and then I'll say I'm destitute and I'll get Medicaid.
Right.
There's a look back.
Yeah, there's a look back. There's a 5-year look back. You know, so if you give money or property away, it means you can't get Medicaid for maybe up to 5 years. I'm just saying that doesn't work. It does not work. And
look, there's a reason for this. Someone, well, that seems awful tough. No, because bottom line is taxpayers are paying for this Medicaid, okay?
Sure.
And if you have means, you shouldn't get Medicaid. Once you don't have means, that's when we're supposed to help. So it's not designed for you to save some of your assets because you want to leave an inheritance for your kids. Yeah. Well, I, the taxpayer, have to pay for your care in Medicaid in a nursing home.
See,
that's
and I'm
not
thinking,
fair. That's not right.
Like you were talking earlier about, you know, if you're in assisted living and you run out of money and you paid them $500,000 and they tell you now you need to leave. Yeah. I mean, I could see the state Medicaid program going, okay, under those circumstances, we'll pay. You know, the assisted living goes, look, you know, we want to keep this resident here. Do you want us to send to a nursing home? It'll cost you more money, state.
Yeah. Right.
You know, why don't you step up, you know, and pay us?
We'll stay.
You know, for these handful of residents that wind up running out of money because they paid $250,000.
I wish more places would do that. That's what my folks.
But the state Medicaid programs don't. You know, I guess it has to work that way.
I see what you're saying.
It does not work that way.
And it does not, and that needs to be fixed. Let's go to Mike. Hi, Mike. Good morning.
Yes, my question is, if I were to choose to establish a trust as opposed to establishing a will, do I not have to pay a trustee or someone to manage my trust?
All right, good question.
Yeah. Okay, here's the distinction there. Okay, so Mike says, you know, I want to. This sounds kind of intriguing. Rather than doing a will, I want to do a trust, so because I want to avoid probate. Well, Mike's his own trustee.
Okay, so he can handle it. Yeah.
Right. So he
It's like you said, you and your wife could set one
yeah,
up.
we set up. We're our own trustees. It's when we pass away. That's when we have a. That's when there's an alternate or successor trustee that steps in.
Okay.
You know, who could be like, often it's a child or other family member that says, okay, now I am the successor trustee because mom and dad died, you know, and now my task is to make distributions out of the trust
based on their wishes.
Right. You know, and most children, you know, those are not paid to do that. I mean, they could be
So
paid.
Mike could set that up, and there may be, Mike, I'm sure, has someone in mind that could do that, but if you didn't, it could be anyone from your pastor, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, anyone you trust or something like that. And then they will be there to deal with it after you've gone. But in the meantime, until you do die,
you
you're
manage
the
your own
trustee.
property. Yeah. Yeah.
By the way,
you can do whatever you want with your money and property. You can take it out of the trust. You can spend it on yourself. It does. You know, that's why the IRS goes, you know, we're not filing a trust tax return for this revocable trust because it's still, everything is under your name.
Under your name. And
under your social security number. It's still yours.
Okay. And by the way, your office can set up trusts.
Yeah, we
correct?
do that. Yes.
That's something that I'm sure you're very good at.
Right. And if he's out of state or out someplace where we can't service him, we'll tell you where to go.
Tim knows someone in every single state, and you can go to the bank with his recommendations. We'll have his contact information up as soon as the show ends here. Let's go to Bill. Bill, good morning. Hi, Bill.
Hey.
Hey.
Good morning.
How can we help you?
My wife's aunt has moved here from another state, and my wife is her POA, and she's in a nursing home here. And,
not the wife, right? The aunt.
You're correct.
Yes.
And she looking at her will. She has a will from the 90s, and she left assets to her sister who is deceased. And then it goes to the children, the siblings of my wife. And in a recent conversation with the siblings, the executor has denied that the will exists. So we're trying to figure out what is going on. We ended the conversation because he had handled the affairs of another aunt, and there was no revealing of what her situation was. She had a home, and we don't know what happened there a few years back. And we're trying to figure out what he is up to. What is typical of that? Do we take that? Do we still try and probate that? Can we force him to probate?
Well, for one, I guess the aunt's not dead yet, right?
Correct.
Okay, so.
And she has dementia, so she can't really sign off on anything.
So
we were talking about her redoing her will in Tennessee.
Well, you know, I would. Those are hard questions. Those are hard cases.
That's a tough one. I mean, okay, and we've got only about 3 minutes here.
Because a lot of it is that is there an original will? Where's the original will? The executor, the named executor under that document says, I don't know where it doesn't exist. Okay, and Mike's or not, you know, Evan says.
That's
Bill says. You know, I know it exists, or at least I know we have a copy of it. All right. Well, you know, if they're convinced that that document exists, I mean, a copy can be admitted. You know, and then if you can prove or explain to the judge why the original can't be produced, it was lost. You know, it was stolen. It burned up in a fire. You know, it's back in Pennsylvania, and she forgot to bring it. Okay. You know, then mostly what the courts are looking at is did the deceased person, meaning the aunt when she's dead, did she deliberately destroy it, or was it just lost?
Okay. So you have to convince him. But are you saying, though, and he's wondering how he deals with this at his stance, is this something that's going to end up in court?
It very likely could.
Okay, a probate court?
Probate court, where he presents, where they literally present a copy of this will that's, and you bring in witnesses that say, yeah, as far as I know, that was her last will and testament, and she became demented, and so we know she had it when she never destroyed it or something.
Okay.
Those are difficult cases.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's difficult, and that's why you have a judge having to litigate that.
And those are some cases why you need probate court.
Yeah, that's where you get into it. But the other side, the executor of the will or whatever, he doesn't have the will, or the other person's going to have an argument on the other side, and the judge will have to decide.
And the judge says, well, what'd you do? Well, what happened to it? The executor. And then so they have to prove, is there a will or not?
Okay. Listen, and in cases like this, and Bill, as he said, and it's interesting, he knows when it's more complex, but we'll have the contact information up. That's something where, you can get more information. Maybe you can go into more depth with Tim on that. Same thing again for the trusts, and there it is. Before we say goodbye to you, Takacs McGinnis, the lovely Barbara, kind of sleeping in this morning, I'm sure. 201 Walton Ferry Road, Hendersonville, Tennessee, and that's the number, 615-824-2571. Tim Takacs and his staff. You've been doing this how long, Tim? Elder care?
Since 1992.
One of the very first people to recognize that this would be a field of law that is growing exponentially, and it has. My goodness.
Absolutely.
I mean, so many people need help on these types of things. Tim, you're awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
it's
for
always
coming
good to
on.
see you again.
It's good to see you. Thank you to your wife, who is. We ought to do a baking show on the Plus.
There you go.
And I want her on here. She's so good. All right, listen. Have a great day. Thank you for coming on, my friend.
All right.
I'll be back. Wrap things up with a programming note about tomorrow right after this.